Okay, I just wanted to do a quick overview of the landing gear. I'm not actually going to go through assembling any of the parts, but I just I wanted to talk about a couple of the different bits and pieces that make it up. The main part actually is printed in two sections and you glue it together. There's actually, you probably can't see it, but there's some channels inside so that it'll help lock those two bits together, and you basically just CA glue that together. When it comes to the suspension, it's pretty straightforward. The shocks attached to the top hole in the landing gear, but they're also in the furthest hole in the swing arm. The wheel is actually in that second hole, it's not in the bottom hole. And then the opposite hole just attaches to the landing gear. With this, I used my old Ender 3 springs, the original springs, which are quite soft. And to retain it, I just dropped a little bit of heat shrink in there after putting the smallest amount of glue in the hole. There are a couple of ways of doing that. You can use, if you've got little self-tappers, you can use those. If you've got a really little nut and bolt set, you could use those. In another video, I showed how you could just cut a bit off a control horn off a servo to pop in there with a little bit of glue, and that'll work as well. In relation to all these bolts that go through here, I've used Nylox on all of them. That's because, as you can see, that I can rotate that one. I can actually rotate that. The reason for that is it'll stay tight with the Nylock on there and won't come loose, which means that I don't have to lock this joint in solid so the nut doesn't fall off. With a standard nut, you'd have to do that or use Loctite, otherwise that nut's going to fall off. That means that, those parts can easily move on each other. So where we see, this arm rotating on that, it's not an issue because it's not that tight that it can't move. Same with the opposite ends of the struts. You can also make your own springs. If you use about a 0.8mm wire and wind it around a 6mm carbon fibre rod or bit of dowel, you can make your own springs. One thing about the Ender springs is they're slightly shorter than I'd like them to be, so if I'd have made my own, I could have made them to length. And the wheels, I was lucky enough that someone just gave me a set of wheels. They're slightly smaller than scale, but that's fine, that's not an issue. For the wheel, what I did, I have a really long bolt that goes from the outer to the inner, and I've got a Nylock nut on the inner, but in between the wheel and the swing arm, I actually have a standard nut as a spacer. And I also have another Nylock. That other Nylock means that I can tighten up towards the wheel without getting 100% tight like I would need to with a standard nut. That means that the wheel can actually spin quite freely. So this landing gear is pretty much ready to go. I just need to trim off these excess bits of thread, and yeah, that's good to go. Righto, hope that helped.